Hello, this is Taj Cameron, and this is the fun part. I'm going to be showing you some of the websites that I developed around podcasting. Now, naturally, when you create a podcast, you're going to end up with an actual podcast website that is an automatic hosting page for your podcast. Which, let's see if I have it. This is your automatic hosting page. For Anchor, this is what it looks like. For Spotify, it looks like this. There you go. This is your automatic one. But for me, because I do multiple things outside of just the podcasting, I like to push and promote the other things that I do with my podcasts. So I actually created a web page individual to that. So here is my service-based website for my podcast. Where I'm also showing you the services I have with the podcast. I tell you my story. I show the mission of what it is that I desire to do when coaching you through the process, what the coaching looks like. And because it's a podcast website, I have created an RSS feed from the direct link in the Anchor podcast to come back to this podcast. So every episode will automatically show up here. In the listing. No, there's the trailer. And it shows you the listing. So this is a way that you can have your podcast externally. When I created the other podcast, this was a page for the blog side of the podcast. This was the main site. I developed and created the graphic in the background. This is the actual stream of episodes. It was 51 episodes for that podcast, which I talked about in the first introduction. It was automatically RSS feeded into this webpage. This was the main page of it, where I have episode links that if I clicked on any of these, I can actually click on these images and it'll take me to that episode. What episode, which episode is trending, so on and so forth. Highest watched, these were the first episodes that were on SoundCloud. This links to all the other podcast sites that the podcast is available on. to just go to the page. Oops. Yes. And Spotify, of course, for this particular podcast that I was running at the time. All 51 episodes are here. This actually was a funnel that I created to give people better access to the website. If you wanted to access anything else outside of my actual podcast, I have graphics that I created. I talked about my gifts and talents. This is actually from the Instagram page, but because I changed it, you can't see the images. I archived it. This was the 2 episodes that I did from the previous first starting podcast when I was invited to co-host. These were the first 2 episodes. This links you back to my Facebook group, which gives you content and information. This funnel, let's see. This is what the initial Instagram first looked like. Talks about challenge and the challenge model. I believe this was a comment from somebody that was following me and it just really loved my content, so I shared their testimonial of it. Again, the amount of episodes that I had on SoundCloud. Another set of links to the actual podcast. It may not be links, it may just be an image to give you a good viewpoint of podcast episodes for that particular one. These are some of the products. This is actually a video where you can see some products that I created. There were the images for the pre-launch for those teas and so on and so forth, but it's a full funnel, and a thank you leads you to gaining a little bit more information about the mission and why we do what we do. This is a full funnel created for this movement or this podcast, and links you back to the podcast information. And this is the current podcast, Steam to Live the Dream. It takes you to the same type of format. This is something that can be done, something nicely put together for this particular podcast. Same information, top episodes, so on and so forth. Our mission statement. It's pretty much a duplicate of the other website. Great thing about using my sourcing webpage just helps you really develop what it is that you're trying to develop when developing your new podcast, which I can now take you to the dashboard this is Wix. You can develop your own website through Wix. Want to create a podcast, create a website? I've developed several websites on this web page. I've been seeing some new ones are popping up and cropping up that you can create and develop websites on. But this has been my go-to. So let's say if we were going to create a new one. If you're going to create it, you'd probably go for a music website. And let's see the templates. Because if you use a music website, you can, instead of having the music thumbnails, you would have their podcast thumbnails. Especially if you have multiple different images for each podcast episode. Something similar to what we saw. Did I leave Steve Harvey up? I don't know. This was a good website showing you how they develop and create the view of how they promote and do their articles. When you're creating a website, especially for podcasting, you want that alternative of blog posts. Some people like to do the videos. But it's a good way, especially if you like that model I just showed you, of things that you could do. There's all different types. You can do this, especially if you're just going to be hosting episodes non-paid for. You just put zero price on it and you just leave the list, or you use the Spotify playlist player and put it in there. I'll go deeper into that when I actually start to show you what it looks like when you're developing. But these are just some templates you can play around with. This is more for a person that's a musician that's touring. Let's see what this one looks like. You can advertise your videos, your content, your this, and this is just different ways it can be done. And you can create graphic images in order to do that. Something very simple for a front page if you want to do something simple, and then add your podcast, because podcasts can be linked in as an extra page on these sites. want to give it some pop, some flavor, some colors. If you're good with graphic images and your topics, you can add topics to that and just change things around. These are beautiful templates. Just giving you things to think about. And these are just music ones. I love this one. Because this is good for blog pages. If you want to do a blog page, as you saw, the blog page that I showed you. If you're doing a combination and you're an artist as well as actual musician, these are great for combining the art of your music and your talent and the podcast together. I believe this is the actual template for the one that you actually see me using. The other two websites, this was the template I used. I just edited it, tweaking it, moving it around a little bit. Unless this was what I used prior to, but I know this is one of the templates I used as a base for my podcast template. Now let's go deeper and see if we can just look up podcasting, because that was for music, which they are interchangeable, but because you want to have players and stuff on your website. This is one template that you can use for a podcast because it has the blog involved with it. As I told you, if you're blogging, you're adding a blog with what it is that you created. This is good, a good starter template. This was the one that actually mine came from for my coaching. This was the template originally. For your health and wellness, this might be a good one to use for your health and wellness pages. If you're urban, let's play around with this is a website, especially if you're into urban music. This is TV. That wasn't the one I wanted. I wanted the other one. Yes, this was what I was talking about. ET Soul. This, if you're a radio person, you can use something like this for your video and blogging content. I find that video and blogging content is something that goes hand in hand, especially if you're talking about a lot of music. Things that are getting lined up and so on and so forth. If you're that urban type that loves urban things, this is a great template. If you want to go in with a lot of art and artsy stuff. I'm an art and artsy artist type person, so of course I'm gonna love stuff like this. And talk music, celebrities, health, anything that you want to talk about. You can create a website that talks about all of these things in tandem with it. Because let's see, oh, I just closed some of these. I no longer have any need for them. But let's see, those are the websites. I'm a music person, so when it comes down to the development of the music side, this is my source and my passion. I'm just a website developer anyway. There's actually another site for this that has a full listing of all the things that you can do podcasting, but I just wanted to give you something as a starter, just to get your mind rolling on what you can do to develop a website for an actual podcast. I hope this was able to bless you in the first part. We're going to dig a little bit deeper in part 2, where we're going to discuss the development of a website, and I will show you how to develop something for yourself in the next part. See you in part 2. This is Taj McCameron for podcast development. Until next time, bye bye.